Tommy.
Hey, Kevin, what do you think?
Wow, look at that. That is gorgeous.
Yeah, this is a half moon table, also called a Demilune table.
Oh, bonjour, bonjour.
Yeah, oh, you know French?
No.
Me either. I have trouble with English. This is a table that I built when I was in probably 9th grade high school.
Kidding.
Yeah.
Really? A high school shop project?
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it was a fun project.
Okay, so obviously half round on the top, which
Yeah.
is very nice. So it sits up against the wall maybe.
Yep, so it's up against the wall.
And then just a simple curved apron and 3 tapered legs?
Yep. Well, the curve is on the apron actually right here, and the tapered legs are tapered on all 4 sides.
I say simple curve. I have no idea how to do a curved apron, but I'm sure you're going to tell me. So what are we thinking? You're going to rebuild it for old time's sake?
For old time's sake, but you know, this is interesting because the argument's been for years with my youngest brother, John. He says, I built that table. And I said, well, I built the table. He said, no, I built it. So he built one also. We just can't remember who built this particular one, but I think it was him.
I'm going to ask Dickie, see
Actually,
what
I
he
think
says.
it was me.
All right. So where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the apron right here. We have to bend that piece of wood up.
En avant.
Okay. Whoa, look at you, huh? All right, Kevin, before I start anything, what I like to start with is a full-size scale drawing to come off of because we're working with circles and arches, and you want to make sure that it's right. So if you look at what I have here, is we're looking at the, let's say the table is upside down, and we're looking at the legs that are attached to the table, the apron. And this is the center of the circle right here. I stopped it out about 1 inch. Okay, the reason is because this arch, when we draw for the table, I don't want the arch to continue and have a slight curve when it goes into the wall. I want it to end at a nice definition of the end.
So this is the center of the circle, and then it goes back straight from there.
Right.
Okay.
So once I've done, I have my piece and I know what I want to do, I then measure from the diameter of the circle right here, and I set my radius, and I swing an arc.
So that's for the top.
That's for the top.
Outside edge of the top.
Right, and I would take my square, I put my square right here, and where the arch end, I then draw a straight line to make it square there, and bring it down here where the arch ends at the diameter. Run a line there so I have my termination points. Now I have to think about the radius for the apron. Everything comes from the same point because all of the arches, although they're smaller, are parallel to one another in the circle. So I then bring my divider in, my compass in, and I set that and swing it, swing
the
it.
outside radius of the apron.
Right. Now I have to think about the thickness of that. So I made this, I believe it's like 1 inch. So I bring it in and I swing my radius there and there.
Inside radius of the apron.
Right. Okay, so now I have a visual of what I'm going to do, the position of the legs, the length of each pieces, and I have to think about how do I want to make these curved pieces.
Yeah, so how are you going to cut that? Is it going to come out of a big block?
Well, then I brought that block to say that you could take this out of that, put it on here, transfer these marks over and cut it. But you're going to use this big chunk of wood, and you're going to need 2 of them to cut the 2 aprons.
So a lot of waste and a beefy bandsaw.
It can be. So I decided to take these pieces right here, and I ripped them down on the table saw,
A glue up.
and they are bendable.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, believe it or not, I still use a lot of material because you have the thickness of the apron, but you also have to think about the thickness of the blade. So double this width is the material that we use.
Gotcha. Okay, so you're going to need a jig to hold that bend.
Right, and this tells me how to build that jig.
Okay.
Okay? And so this is the form that I made, or jig.
And what is this? This thing's bigger than the table itself.
This is heavy. This is 4 pieces of MDF that I screwed together. And then what I did is I took some water-based urethane and coated it with about 4 or 5 coats of that. And then I put a layer of paste wax on it so the glue wouldn't stick to it.
So now we bend and glue, and then clamp it in here.
Right. So when I take this first piece is going to go in dry. You take and put your clamp on it. And
Tighten
just,
it?
nope,
Leave it as is.
just hold it there, that's all. I'm going to center it like that, okay? So now, what we need to do is we're going to put glue on one side of each piece, and I'm going to use a slow setting glue, all right? So just put a nice layer on. So here we go, I'm going to get that. You're going to just put a little tension on that if you can. Yep, pull it in easy with your clamp. And just let that set. And we'll repeat this process with the rest of the boards. Now we'll take this. I'm going to just tap it easy. Get it started. Okay, so now we got to start putting clamps on it. So now we have our clamps alternated, so when we tighten it, it will go in parallel. So I want to see I've got the joint open there. I'm going to load some glue in there.
How long you want this to set up?
Well, we're going to set it up overnight, all right? But while that's setting up, we can work on the legs. All right, so the next thing we need to do is take our legs and taper them on all 4 sides. Okay? So this is a sample of what I have. Now, if you look at the top of the leg right here, this is actually straight before it starts to taper.
And why is that?
Well, that gives me a nice flat surface to mount the apron to.
So when tapering, you got a jig for that?
I got a jig, and so what I did is I've ripped the legs out of mahogany. I'm actually going to make them just a little bit bigger than my sample piece, okay, which isn't a big deal. So I found the center, and then I drew the width that I wanted at the bottom of the taper.
Gotcha.
So I set this on my tapering jig like this, and I have a stop here so the board doesn't, so I can push against.
Oh, and so then the outside of that line lines
Right.
up to the edge of your jig here.
Right, now if you look down here, you can see that the saw will end right about here, giving me a flat cut.
Okay.
All
So
right.
the material will stop coming
Right,
away.
so what I'm going to do is I'll make a cut, I'll rotate it, make a cut, then you see what I have to do after that.
Okay.
All right, so I glued this up yesterday, so I wanted the glue to dry overnight. So now I'm going to take it out of the foam. And what I did is I waxed this really well after a couple of coats of water-based urethane. So hopefully it won't stick to the foam. Oh, look at that, huh?
Go ahead.
All right. Let's see how it stayed. Oh, nice. Stayed good. So that's the apron all glued up. Now what we need to do is true it up with the jointer. We'll do a few passes, and then we'll take this and run it through the planer so it'll be the same thickness all the way around.
That's pretty cool and good looking.
Yeah, it looks good all sanded up.
Tell me how you're going to cut it though, right? Because the legs are going to go in between and on the ends.
Right, so we have to figure that and figure the angle that we have to cut it. So here's our drawing, full size.
Okay.
Now, if I take the piece and I put it here and I just eyeball it, because I want to be in the rough location, same arch. So just get the angle across the back.
Just connect the dots and now you know you got your line.
And I've got my line and my angle all at once. Right there. And to get the angle for the front legs, which I have right there, I can take the square here and I can go up like this. There you go.
So that's where you're going to make your cuts?
That's where I'm going to make my cuts. I want to cut the mortises in my aprons and my legs using my handheld mortising machine. Okay, so now all of our pieces are sanded and we're ready to glue it up. But just before we glue it up, I'm going to use some sanding paste first. It's another layer of sanding really fine, but it'll also fill the grains of the wood and give it a little bit of a color. I like to do it before we put the glue on in case we get any glue spilling out of the joints. It'll wipe off nice and easy.
Oh, okay. So is this also your final finish, Tommy?
No, what we'll do is we're going to put a wax over it. I could lacquer it. We could put a water base over it. Okay, let's get all the glue cleaned off.
How long do you think we got to let this set up?
About half an hour at the most. We'll make the top next. I'm going to use our template. Okay, so remember that the first inch in is square. So I'll put a mark there. First inch in on this is square, and it's square off the center of the circle.
Okay.
And this is the center of our circle right here. So I'll just transfer a mark right over. I also want to be from the back side of the table, 1 inch back. So now I'm going to come 1 inch this way.
So you're basically finding a center point again so you can swing another radii?
Right. So that's where I'll put the center to place the screw for my swing stick that will make the radius.
So you're going to cut this with a router?
Exactly. I have a templating guide on the router plate that will sit right into that hole. So now I can reach under and I can feel the beginning where I want to start to cut because the board will be even. So I'm probably going to do 3 passes.
So all the way through, just a couple straight cuts.
Right, we'll do a little straight cut here, line it up with that line right there, and we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, so there's my square cut, and that's our radius. I used a 1/4 inch slotting bit inside, in the front and the back apron to accept the clips to hold the top down for expansion and contraction. So put this on.
So how do you want to fasten top to bottom?
Well, we're going to fasten it with those little clips that I made right there, and that's out of some scrap pine. I also put these right in the slot like that. All right, Sonny, let's flip it over.
Take that. Get this out of the way. Have a look at it. Whoa! Tommy, c'est magnifique.
C'est méga vite.
C'est magnifique. It's a compliment.
Oh, it
Trust
is?
me,
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
Look at that. That thing looks awesome.
Looks pretty good. It's a fun project.
Hang on a second. Hang on a second.
Oh,
Let's
the
see what
old and the new.
50 years does for you.
Yeah, well, I grew up, see?
Apparently. Thanks for watching. This Old House has got a video for just about every home improvement project, so be sure to check out the others. And if you like what you see, click on the subscribe button. Make sure that you get our newest videos right in your feed.